what are you doing now? Specifically, I know you're teaching at OU, and you were talking about a group in addition to research and a class you teach. There's a group you were able to form
Yep.
that has begun to have early on quite an impact there on the campus. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it's tied to purpose.
Yeah. So, back in January, I had the opportunity to host some students from Baylor University, some of the top business school students there. And they came to OU for the afternoon, and I was able to host a Live with Purpose event. That's what we were calling it, where we brought them to campus. They were able to see this incredible organization called Not Your Average Joe that hires people with learning disabilities, and took them to this coffee shop. They got to learn about the organization. They also got to learn about an event that happened on campus that was just really cool. It's called Fill the Stadium, and it was this big event put on. One of the leaders of the group that put it on was there. They raised $4 million, had 25,000 people come to the University of Oklahoma in the football stadium to be encouraged, and it was just incredible. And then they came back to the business school, and the president of the university challenged them with this call to like find your purpose and live with it. It was awesome. Then I was able to share about this myself as well, and just my struggle of viewing business world as second class calling. What does that look like? And had three other professors from the entrepreneurship department speak to the students, and the results just seemed incredible. We talked to the OU students that were there, and they said, "Man, we want this. We need this." So been talking with other people here at the university, and we're exploring what it could look like to put together a purpose forum. So a purpose event, what would it look like to challenge and equip Gen Z, the most purpose-driven generation of our equip them with finding and realizing their purpose, whatever that may be. If it ends up being starting a car washing business, come on. If it ends up being a nail salon or a hair salon, like, come on, you can live with purpose in these contexts. So that's what I'm talking about.
I love that. And as you're saying it, I'm thinking, okay, so, and I think it's right. Gen Z is the most purpose-driven generation, at least in recent history.
Yeah.
To a certain degree, every generation is when they're younger, and then that fades. But this is different. There is a uniqueness to the Gen Z psyche, and I fear, because I'm very much at my age, I'm very much, I'm passing the torch. I'm not dying. I'm not going. I'm not dying. But it's time to pass the torch and really make sure that I'm developing the next generation. But I worry, and I think it's the right word, about this new generation, Gen Z,
Sure.
if they don't find if somebody doesn't guide them to believe there is purpose and you can find it, and here's a way to think and pray and journal and self-evaluate, all of that, what will happen to them if they don't? Will they just, if they go, is it a pendulum? They go from really high on the, I really want to find my purpose scale, to I'm swinging way over here to I am a world-class cynic.
Yeah.
I don't think there'll be a middle position.
No, so interesting. And so that's actually something that I'm really hoping to address. Even as a professor for myself, I know there's another professor, we've talked about this, but there was a recent article that came out that said Gen Z is getting fired like just months after getting hired. Employers are really upset with Gen Z. That's what this article was saying. They said that 50% of the reason for their terminations were motivational issues. So that there's not work engagement, there's not motivation. And it just seems as though Gen Z, they're looking for something different than just making a living, where maybe previous generations were okay with just making a living. My perspective is that Gen Z wants to make a difference in the world. They want their work to count for something greater. So I think there's a tension here. And I think the tension is, does Gen Z need to change? Or do the organizations of today need to change? And personally, I think the answer is both. I polled my students on this. It was interesting. They were kind of back and forth. But I think the organizations of today, in some respects, need to embrace purpose. What does it look like to create meaningful work? Not just a decent work environment, but a meaningful work environment. And there's research to show that if you do this, it can be better for your firm. And not only that, if you're going to be hiring Gen Z workers, you almost need to, in some respect, create some sort of environment. So I think the organizations need to shift a little bit, but I also think Gen Z needs to realize what the business world is like. Yeah. Their bosses are not from their generation. You can't be showing up to work in the ways maybe which you show up to class. Like, things need to shift. So my hope is to equip Gen Z in some sort of way to become the purpose-driven leaders of tomorrow that will shape organizations and that will be successful. But I really want to prepare them to recognize, hey, this is going to look different than maybe what you think. You may end up working as an auditor for 2 years, like myself. You may be grinding. But if you can hold fast to this higher purpose, this higher reason for being there, man, you're going to be able to do countless hours. You're going to be able to do the grind knowing that there's something greater that you're working for. So that's kind of my vision.
No, I love it. There was some research done a while back in the kind of during the golden age of missions, and one of the data points that came out of it was that the people we equate with greatness in the world of missions didn't really come to understand their purpose. They wouldn't use that word, but the way you're describing it, that would fit. They never understood their purpose until 15 to 20 years into their work overseas.
Wow.
And so these were super saints. This is Hudson Taylor. This is, guys like that who Amy Carmichael. I mean, these were the folks books were written about. And I remember as a young Christian thinking, okay, I'm 22 years old. What do I think I know at 22? Now, I know what I know, but I need to take a little bit of the long term and recognize that God is not in a hurry to show me everything at once. Your story is a perfect illustration of that. He did not show you everything in one encounter.
Yeah.
Right. And I think
multi-year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if we can help, companies do need to adapt. There's no question. No question. But the workforce needs to adapt. And part of that is becoming a little more, patience, not the right word, but a little more aware of the process.
Yeah.
And living within the longer term, living within the process versus I want it now. And if they're truly, you're the doctor here, so help me out here. But if they're truly purpose driven, I think they would be able to see the wisdom in that. Don't give up on it because it didn't happen this weekend.
Absolutely.
Live with the process. Let it happen. Live in it.
Absolutely.
Would seem to be good advice.
Oh, you are so right, Mike. If we look in the psychology literature, one of the core dimensions of what it means to have purpose in life, it's long-term directedness. There's a long-term dimension. So like if somebody's working a job that they feel like, man, this feels like a dead-end job. If you have purpose and longer-term vision, you're able to look at that as a training ground. Maybe it's a training ground for social interactions. It's a way to save money for this later thing, or you can look at it and say, hey, I can impact the lives of people here now. It reframes things and says, hey, this is going to lead to my personal growth. This is going to lead to impact. There's something bigger here, but it does take a longer term perspective. I think, I think the aspiration to want to make a positive impact in the world is incredible. But for some people, a lot of people, that mass impact, that sense of, oh my gosh, I'm changing the world. I think people want that early, but oftentimes it takes years, maybe decades to become an expert. And I think my brother, so I have a middle brother, Connor, he's an incredible designer in Nashville, does incredible things. And his challenge to my students and others is become excellent at what you do in your 20s. Become excellent, like invest, grow, because that's stewardship of your life. And there's going to be times in your life where maybe then you're going to be put before kings, maybe for some people. But it can be a process. And I think early on in life, it's like, man, I want to see this happen when I'm 20. I want to see this happen when I'm 21. Maybe it will. But what if you have a longer term perspective, you can embrace the mundane and realize that it's beautiful. You can embrace the boring, seemingly boring, and realize it's part of a greater story. So